Hey everybody, how's it going? Am I in focus? Okay, here's another episode, episode 3 of how I shot it. Today we'll be going into how I shot this picture. It's of the moon. If you recognize it as home, it means you are a Martian and not of this earth. What are you watching this video for? You have a way cooler thing going on being from space. Anyway, let's get right into it. All right, so I shot this picture because I was very inspired recently of all these cool moon happenings, eclipses and things like that. Oh, this will never happen for another 300 years. Well, I gotta get out there and take some pictures. After all, my Facebook feed was being cluttered with all these pictures of cell phones and people taking amazing pictures of this moon over and over again. It's all over Instagram. All you gotta do is do a hashtag thing. You'll find tons of pictures of the moon shot by complete amateurs, and the pictures came out awesome. So I kind of got inspired by that, and I thought, what if I could do that? And usually I talk about taking pictures that are inspiring to me and something new that I can add to the community of photographers. However, I'm pretty sure my picture kind of pales in comparison to a lot of the astrophotographers out there. All the stars, the moon they take pictures of are awesome. I could never do that as well as they can, and I just kind of want to do this for myself and see how well my moon picture could come out. So this is my first try on that. So let's take a look at this picture. As you'll see that there is a moon there right in the center. It's not a full moon, and the reason why I took the picture that night was because the sky was exceptionally clear, and I went out there and I thought, what if I can really get this on my through a lens that can get as close as possible and that can crop in maybe a little bit later to get that moon, really close up to the viewer. And that's exactly what I did. I got my Xt1 here. I got a few batteries in my pocket, all charged up, ready to go, and the 55 to 200 millimeter lens. As you see, this is a monster of a lens, guys. I'll put it right here so you guys can see. It is a no joke. It's pretty damn heavy for a Fuji lens, and I do like it a lot. The reason why I got this lens in the first place was because I was doing a birthday gig not way before this shooting of the moon, and it was at a pool. And I couldn't get to the subjects in the middle of the pool. So at that point, I really wished that I had a zoom lens so I could reach the subjects in the middle of the pool without having to get wet. So I missed out on a lot of opportunities on that gig, which is why I invested in a zoom lens. So this was a perfect opportunity to use this particular lens when I was shooting the moon. On the Xt1, it looks pretty damn sharp. I did not use the hood that night, but I did set it on a tripod. And the tripod has a little tripod plate that can be very well balanced with this heavy of a lens. And I use a Benro Travel Angel tripod, and it works really well. I recommend investing in a pretty, investing some money in a tripod. I used to buy the cheap stuff, and it's okay, but get an aluminum sturdy one. You can go the Manfrotto route if you want to, but I go Benro. A lot of my stuff is Benro. I really recommend them. So after setting my camera on the Benro tripod and making sure all my knobs are tight, I have a ball head, by the way, makes nice fluid movement, and it gets very secure, surprisingly, from a ball head. I set it towards the moon, and I zoomed all the way in towards the moon there. And unlike episode 2 of how I shot it, I explained how in that environment I use aperture priority mode. That's where aperture is controlled on your lens, and everything else is done for you automatically on your camera, so I can enjoy the show. In this sense, it was just dead of night, and I was on a tripod. I wanted to be very still so I can get the clearest picture possible, and there wasn't any like sirens or lights going around me or any changing of environment, so I thought full-on manual was the best way to go, where I can control what was going to happen in my camera, and that's exactly what I did. I set my aperture at f/22, which is infinitely in focus, but you're going to need a lot of light for that to make up for it, right? So my aperture squeezed down low, but there was a lot of light coming through because I'm aiming at the moon after all. The moon is like pretty much like a light source, so I'm pretty much aiming at a light source, and because the light was so strong, I can get away with squeezing down so low. This is very important now. What I did was I didn't just take a shot. I might have taken a test shot here and there, but I thought, if I can squeeze it down this low and let a little bit of light through, I can get away with having a long time lapse of a shutter speed. You know what I mean? So instead of like a small shutter speed and taking that shot, not enough light would have been gotten through because I'm really squeezing down on the iris of the lens. If the lens is wide open, a lot of light is coming through, and I just need a little short shutter speed. but because I'm squeezing down, not much light comes through right away. I need to give it some time. That's what they mean by long exposure. So the long exposure, I must have done like 30 seconds of a long exposure period, and I set it on a timer. So I set the timer on my camera, pressed shoot, the shutter button, and I walked away from the camera. When I did that, it started to count down. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Click. It opened up the shutter speed. The shutter opened up, allowing light to come in for about 30 seconds. Now at this point, the reason why I do a timer before the shutter speed, extended shutter speed time, is because I don't want the vibration of my hand to shake the camera in any sort of way. There are micro vibrations that can happen. So I press it, let the timer run its course, and then it starts to measure the shutter speed. Hopefully this makes sense, guys. I don't like to do it right away and have it go for 30 seconds. Give it time to settle within 5 seconds, and then it starts taking in all this light over 30 seconds. So that's why the moon is nice and well adjusted in terms of brightness. You guys should also know, when I took this picture, it came out a little yellow of a color, which I was okay with actually when I first took it. I was like, I kind of like that picture. And as I adjusted it on my computer in Camera Raw, Adobe Camera Raw, I made it look a little bit more bluish, more icy in color. And all I did was adjust the color temperature a little bit, and that's all I did. It made it more bluish. And I thought it suited the image better. So I kept it, and I liked that image a lot. I had a few other images I was comparing it to, and this one, the one came out the sharpest. It came out the most well composed, and the composing really just came up to how I was going to crop it. Was it going to have a dead center, more to the right, more to the left? That's kind of up to you and how you decide it's going to come out in the end. So as you can see, I did crop in a lot because I wanted the moon to be closer up. The quality on these cameras, you can crop in quite a bit in the lens. You can crop in quite a bit and have it still retain a lot of its quality, which is important. I'll also have you note the way it's different from the other how I shot it videos I've done for you guys is that I shot this in RAW. I knew that I was going to have to adjust it later on my computer, so I set it on the tripod, did in full manual, squeezed down the aperture, messed with the ISO a little bit, and did long exposure and in RAW. And then in RAW I messed with the contrast a little bit, made it pop a little bit more, and then I adjusted the color temperature, making it a little blue and icy in flavor. Delicious moon. Anyway, the one thing I should mention very quickly, guys, is that when I first started, I had the ISO set very low. Hopefully you guys can see where the ISO knob is. Okay, it's gonna be right over here. Okay, I actually had it set to like 200 or L, which is a very low ISO. And the reason why I did that is because people were saying ISO is almost like a bad thing. It introduces too much grain. If you can help it, if you got lots of light, why use ISO? And I said, well, that makes perfect sense to me. After all, I'm aiming at the moon, which is a light source at this point. Why would I need ISO? All the light's coming from there. ISO is sensitivity to light. So if there's not much light, I can amp up the ISO and really amp up the light. It artificially creates that light in the camera digitally, and that would introduce noise, the little pixelated noise in your camera. Some people don't like that. A lot of people don't like that. People want the pristine look of the picture itself. So I set it as low as possible and started taking pictures this way in manual mode. It started coming out okay, and I thought, well, I'll just fix it in post when I put it on Camera Raw. And I thought, why don't I do a little, why don't I try doing it in JPEG and also RAW, messing with the ISO. So I put the ISO up to 200, 400, 600, 800, and started seeing the difference of what ISO really does. And now I should let you know, guys, people are scared of ISO because of the grain that it introduces. It makes it look dirty, and everyone starts making the picture the same. I'm going to recommend you guys experiment with ISO, because after this, I tried it. I saw that ISO was a fantastic tool to make your pictures really pop. It gives you dynamic range, it gives it grit, it gives it contrast, that even though you have light, you still need some ISO in my opinion. So don't shy away from it just because everyone else says it's a bad thing. It's a great thing. Maybe when you're shooting a person in a dark low light area, you know, the ISO isn't a great thing to do. You should have had light to begin with, but the ISO can really help save your ass when you're taking pictures for a client. But also things like the moon, it can give it that extra pop, and a little bit of grain won't kill you. So just so you guys know, guys, these kinds of cameras, as I mentioned in episode 2 of how I shot it, they can handle high ISO without getting too grainy. You can be shooting in a monastery. In fact, I saw a picture of this. I was so blown away by how well this camera can handle high ISO with candlelight as your only light source, and the person came out well illuminated due to this camera. Was there grain if you really zoomed in? Sure, but the picture was awesome and it worked well with it. So just because it's ISO doesn't mean there's high ISO or medium ISO, doesn't mean you should shy away from it. Definitely experiment. In the end, guys, the 55-200 lens worked great for this application. Maybe you can get an extension tube. I'm not sure how they work, but there's lots of different applications for this type of lens, and I hope to be taking more moon pictures in the future. And I hope this definitely inspires you to try to take your own during these cold or warm winter months, depending on when you watch this. Thank you so much, guys, for the subscribes, the likes, and the shared videos. I really appreciate it. Please leave your criticisms and your experiences of shooting in the moon below. I'll be happy to respond. I'll talk to you guys soon. Have a good day. Bye-bye.